everyone to our second episode. So today we decided to kind of take a turn, if you may, because of the climate of our country right now and things that are happening. We decided that this topic is very important to us as educators, to us as colored people in society right now. So we decided to address what's happening. So our conversations will be centered around that. And later, we will also be interviewing some of our coworkers, our fellow educators, to hear, what they're feeling, how they're feeling on this matter also.
Yes.
All right. All right. So,
and I think I just want to add, we thought that it was important to have this conversation because, and we talked about it last night because we're always talking, that if we were having lunch, if we were in school, this is something we will be talking about every single day, like during lunch, and it will come up in our conversation and we will share our feelings. So we're like, why, hide it and why keep it private when, we can share this with you as well.
We're just going to start out with just how are we feeling right now? Like in this climate, how are you feeling?
Well, at first, I guess I was very angry. I was very angry after watching the part of the video because I couldn't bring myself to watch everything. But now I am feeling more grateful, I guess, for all the support and all the people that are rallying around the cause, and hopeful that possibly we will come up with a solution. But I'm also thinking about there's always a what if in a situation. And if we're thinking back to Colin Kaepernick, when he started all of this, what if we actually listened to him? Would we still be in this position? So, yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. I feel emotional. Like, it's weird. I have a different cluster of emotions, but throughout the day, I feel a different emotion within each time. Every conversation I have a different emotion. It's weird, but most of all, I just feel like tired and frustrated, like it's just like, again, something's happening. Like, why us, it's hard. It's sadness and anger and, sometimes the gratitude shows, but then that one doesn't last for long for me, It's just a bunch of emotions. It's hard.
Well, for me, I want to just piggyback on what Joe has said. For me, I couldn't bring myself to watch the entire video, but then I started just watching other events that have happened regarding it, and I started looking and backtracking, and anger. The anger was still there, and that was the feeling that I was mostly feeling, and I just let it settle in. But I feel like at every peak point, you have to feel that emotion and let it settle in order to go through the process of emotions and finally get to that settling emotion. So at this moment, I'm just ready for change.
And I don't know, I'm just heartbroken. We see it all the time. We protest, we do all these things when all these horrible events happen, and then it's like, then we go back into another cycle. When is it going to change? When are we going to break that cycle and just make the change?
Mm-hmm. Very similarly, I was very angry at first, like extremely angry, because I was wondering, like, why are we going back to this? And the severity of this situation really, made me even more angry, because it was just like in plain sight. Like, it was so obvious that this man was suffering, and it was allowed to happen, and there were enablers in the situation, which made it even worse. And then a sense of pride because of how everyone is, standing up for the cause, but then disappointed in some ways also, because as Tabby said, it's 2020. Why is this still happening? And I am just hopeful that moving forward, we will be able to address this in a way that affects change, like not just, oh, we're doing this and it's another protest, it's something else happening, and then the cycle starts over. And then speaking from a point of view of a parent, I'm a parent of a teen girl and Black boys. I have Black twin boys. My kids have been grossly affected by this situation because we constantly have conversations with our family, that we have table talks, or we talk about what's happening. And I see my daughter crying constantly because she is hurt, and she's wondering, why is it that we are punished because we're Black? And it hurts me because I am crying when I see her crying, and when I see her hurt, and then I see my boys, they're just totally confused because they're seeing another video, they're hearing another story, and they're just wondering, they have so many questions. And teaching them to stand up and speak up for themselves, be respectful, but speak up for yourself. So now what do I say to them? What do I say to them? Oh, only in certain situations you're allowed to speak up. I'm just hurt and just hopeful, as
And I'm not a mother yet, but I could just I could just understand where you're coming from, just because I want to be a mother someday.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that I will have a child that is going to be is going to be considered in the eyes of society a colored boy or a colored girl.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I have these conversations with them when they're still at their youth? They're still children, and I have to have conversations with them that I should be having with adults. You understand? And it's just it's terrifying to me that I will one day have a child and I will have to sit them down and explain to them how are they viewed in the eyes of society, and what are things that they need to do to be to protect themselves against people that supposedly need to protect them.
Well,
Yeah,
I have that conversation.
And what's interesting is, like, some people in our society will never have to have these conversations. These things will never cross their mind. But we have to teach them how to navigate a system that was not built for them.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say, like, just adding on to both of you. But Gladys made me think, like, this is a conversation that we have to have with Black and brown kids. And some people, they don't have to go through these things. And that's why it's just hard for them to understand, because they're like, what is all of this for? Like, why all this rioting, and why all this protesting for just this guy? And they're not understanding that this is something that has been going on for years. This is something that we've been fighting for years. This is something, it's hard to have to teach young kids, okay, when you go outside, make sure you're doing this. When you're driving a car, make sure your hands are up. If you're talking to the police, make sure you do these things. And, it's just a lot that we have to go through, and Black and brown men and young boys have to go through, that a lot of people don't. And it's hard for them to understand. And just even thinking about when, COVID-19 started, but also when they said we had to wear a mask. I remember being afraid, like, I have to walk outside with a mask on my face. Like, now that's giving people even more. Or even, like, thinking of my boyfriend having to go, like, I don't have brothers and I don't have a son, so I never had to feel that fear. But now I'm like, wow, it's too much.
Also taking out the innocence from the child, because you are having this conversation with the kid as a young kid. So you're introducing them to the world. The world is forcing you to introduce them to, okay, this is what racism is. This is what discrimination looks like. And you, as a Black brown boy or Black brown girl, you are the main target for that discrimination. And it's kind of hard to talk to kids about this because they still don't understand. In their mind, everyone is equal. Everyone is the same. So it's like you take the innocence from that child, and now they're walking with a bullseye on their back. And now will they be able to see their white friends the same? Will they be able to see their non-Black friends the same?
We want to teach our generation, and we want to teach generations to come about love and peace and not hate and acceptance. But how can we do that when the generations that came before us and that are right now are still putting out there those negative feelings and that negativity that well, plain and simple, racism. How can we teach them? How can we rise above all of this to teach them something new when all they see on the news is the hate and just not accepting people for who they are?
And that's why how are you and how you feel, that's why that's such a hard question to answer. I know, Charlie, but it's so hard to answer because you have all these things that's like going through your mind, like so many things to think about. And when you do want to feel better, like you do want to, you know, try to say, well, let me distract my mind, it's just it's too much.
And I thought about, you know, how we made a deliberate decision to make sure that the boys were in a school that was very diverse, that they had friends of different color, that, you know, that they understood it. And to them, as you said, Gladys, it's just their friends. Like, these are my friends. It doesn't matter what color. And they don't choose their friends based on their color. They choose their friends for who they are. So, you know, a lot of it begins at home. Like, what are you saying? What are the conversations you're having with your families, with your kids at home? What are you telling them? You know, what are you saying when you think they're not listening? That's for the part, that's a big thing too. How are you reacting when in certain situations, you know? All of that actually speaks to how they react when they come to school, or how they will react when they're on the outside. So we have to be mindful of things like this.
And not just that, but when addressing in my classroom about any situation that happens in my classroom, I address my class as human beings, because at the end of the day, that's what we are, human beings. I never address them as color, and it's not because I am trying to be ignorant to color in my classroom, and it's not because I'm colorblind. That is not it. What I'm trying to teach my class and everybody that I come in contact is that at the end of the day is one race, and that's we are all human beings, and whatever hurts you hurts me. And I think that needs to be really really learned as a child.
And I think we need to go a little bit deeper too. Yeah, we're human beings, but we also have to realize that it's okay that that person is brown. It's okay that that person is black. And it's okay that that person is white.
Deeper.
So like you were saying about addressing our students as saying, like, we're all a part of the human race. I see you as a human. I feel like we also need to go a little bit deeper and acknowledge that it is okay to say that student is black, that student is brown, that student is white. It's okay to acknowledge all their differences, instead of just saying we're all a part of the human race.
And I agree with you, and that's exactly what I was trying to say. It's not just that we're all human beings, but it's just acceptance of like all our differences is what makes us us, and that we need to be acceptant of that, and we need to love that about each other. We don't all need to be the same in order to relate to one another.
Exactly.
So with all of that being said now, as educators, I mean, we're educators and we have a job to do, whether we like it or not, right? We have a job to do. So what are we doing to affect this kind of change? Like, what decisions have we made?
I know a lot of us, you know, we start with what books are we going to read to like have these conversations. I know for me as a 5th grade teacher, it's a little bit different because we have, and I think middle schools do it as well, like just this advisory time where it is a time to talk about, you know, current events and social emotional and do that social emotional work. So kids were already ready to like come into the conversation, like, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing, you know, what are your thoughts? How are you guys feeling? You know, and then I think that was good because then it helped us to, like the 5th grade teachers, to have this conversation that was needed to be had with them, you know, and really talk about, and then also to let them hear another side. There was something I was saying to my team today, like you can see the kids that are having these conversations with their parents and the ones that aren't. You can see the ones that are having certain types of conversations with their parents, you know, that you might need to be like, okay, well, that's one side, here's another side, you know, see how you feel, because it's good for them to hear different parts of it. So for me, it's just I'm having the conversations with them, the conversations that some people feel like it's hard to have with the kids that they're teaching. I feel like that they are too necessary not to have, and I always felt that way, you know, even when I taught 3rd grade and 4th grade. I was like, I just have to let some of them know, like, this isn't something that's normal. This wouldn't have happened years ago, me being your teacher, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like it's important for me as a teacher to have these important conversations, you know.
And it relates back to my comment in our first episode, which was that at the end, we have the power to, even though they're small, to make really big impacts.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like these conversations, there's never a young age to have these conversations. You just have to find a way to introduce and expose them to the conversation, because they need to happen in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think it's never too early, because if us as colored women have to have this conversation with our own children for them to be ready to go out into society, I feel like all children could be ready to have somewhat this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to add that one big part of what we can do is to change the narrative. And how do we do that? It's the exposure that the kids get. And if you think about it, as a 4th grade teacher, I think I mentioned it to you guys, the only thing we studied was slave time one day in colonial and American Revolution, and that's it, one day. And we talked about slavery. So the information that you're presenting your kids about African American, you need to be conscious of what you are saying and what you're presenting. For example, like the hidden figures were big for me, because I didn't know that we had African American women who were working in science. Yeah. So those things that were exposed to me, that I'm exposing my kids to, those are beneficial as well. And changing the curriculum as we're showing, as we're teaching, just making sure that we are choosing the right books, we're choosing to use the right vocabulary, we are choosing to display certain like example to our kids so they could refer to when they are older. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, Jules, because I think we grew up not feeling comfortable, you know, talking about race, talking about color, talking about these issues, you know, even more so in America. Mm-hmm. And, you know, growing up in the Caribbean, it was a lot different. We had colorism, you know, racism wasn't that prevalent. So, you know, we were okay. Our thing was just, you know, shades of color. But here we need to have our kids understand that it's okay to speak about these issues. It's okay that I can speak with my friend that is white about issues of slavery and issues that are affecting us. And we can both have a conversation. And it's okay. So as you said, just changing the narrative is a step forward, because when we change the narrative and when we kind of dig into that discomfort that is there, that level of discomfort, when we're having these conversations with the younger generation, they grow up more comfortable having these conversations, feeling less comfortable, because there are situations where we have adults who you really don't know what to say. You don't know what's the next step. How do I speak to this child about this? How do I, approach this? So
I think that's an important point, Carlia, where she mentioned, sorry, Tabby, just letting having the kids not knowing that it's okay. That's something that I noticed how Joe said in 4th grade, when I was a 4th grade teacher, there's no lessons on it. So when I would bring up these conversations and then they will try to talk about it on their side, sometimes they used to come back from recess like, oh, he said something about slavery, something. I'm like, you can talk about, like, yeah. And that's exactly why, and I'm so glad you said that, and I didn't really put it together till you said it just now. That's exactly why some people now as adults, they can't have the conversations. They're comfortable to have it with their kids. They're comfortable to have it with their coworkers, and that's just so crazy. Yeah. Sorry, Tabby, go ahead.
Yeah, and you literally hit it on the head with the last part, which you said, and also tying into what Charlie was saying is that some of these people that we're talking about that are uncomfortable are actually the parents of these kids. So we have to also provide them with support and provide them with information to guide them, because I feel like the learning is not just in school. Like teachers aren't just responsible for teaching our students about social injustices. It should also come from the parents. So
it's a way, in a way, we have to, we're we're a filter for the children as well as the parents, because whatever's on the news, you know, sometimes we watch the news and there are certain things that just kind of only show one perspective. And I feel like we're the filters and we really have to take ownership and change the narrative and really just have these conversations. Just because it's uncomfortable, it does not mean that it doesn't have to happen. It has.
That's how you just said that it's one perspective. This is when encouraging our kids to ask questions, to doubt everything that you're told. This is when it's important, because you're going to be told things and you have to really think about it, research for yourself, and then make up your own mind. So they're not just just saying facts that they heard, but able to research something and make up their own mind, come up with their own conclusion. And I feel like this is like a thing that we need to focus on as a group of people, I guess. Yeah, like
as a collective.
As a collective, like make sure that our kids, when they leave, they're able to research by themselves. They're able to question someone. Whoever you are, you could say something. I don't have to actually believe everything you say.
And that's so true, because
sorry, Tabby.
I was gonna say, because we see it as adult. Like, I'm in some of those groups and I see people repost things as adults, and I'm just like, where are you getting this? Did you do your own research? So I think equipping them with those tools will definitely be helpful in guiding them.
And not to sound like a bumper sticker, but once again, knowledge is power, and the more you could fight for what's right.
Yeah, and that's why it touches so deep for me, because I grow my kid. Like, I tell them, listen, express yourself, advocate for yourself. As long as you're being respectful, make sure you speak out, you know. So then I'm going to tell them, okay, but in this one situation, shut your mouth and act dumb. Like that's how I internalized it, because that's what I'm telling you. So after all you told me, then in this situation, it changes. What kind of messages are we sending to them?
Exactly.
It needs to change.
It shouldn't be it shouldn't even come down to that you have to teach your child to be a certain way in this system. The system is supposed to set up where everyone can act whatever way they want to, and it does not affect them unequally or inequitable. So it all boils down to changes in the system, and then our behaviors will go around that.
I feel like this work has to be done from the top to bottom.
Yeah.
On the top, it needs to trickle down. And at this moment, us in the bottom, we are the ones trying to lift it up so that we're the ones trying to move it up, so that trying to do the work and trying to make this change. But the truth is that in order for this to happen, everybody has to be in the same route, in the same journey.
Because some people, they say you have equal rights, right? So what more? Like, I don't understand what's all of this for. You have it. So, but they're not noticing all the systematic things that we have to deal with, just all the things, but even more so just things that we have to think about, like Charlie was saying, teaching the boys, and your daughter, this is how you need to act when you go outside. Just this is what you need to know. And yes, they're taught to be open and advocate for themselves. But then you also need to tell them, but when you're talking to a police officer, just make sure, that hands are seen and you're using a specific tone of voice. And I mean, it's hard.
Which is why I think we need to move away from this equality thing.
Exactly.
We need to move towards equity.
Yeah.
It's saying we're all equal does not level the playing field. I'm sorry.
And you know what? It shouldn't wait. It shouldn't happen that we shouldn't be alarmed and alert and aware of these situations when things like what is happening now. We need to look at it as every day. What does a colored woman, a colored man have to deal with on the day-to-day basis? It shouldn't be just when certain things happen. No, every day.
Yeah.
Every day. All right.
Floyd is just one of the people that it has
Exactly.
all over the media because of the injustice of it. But every day, other colored people go through this in America. And what is happening with that? That's the work that we need to do. We need to start cutting down those things on the everyday basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Great conversation, ladies. So any closing thoughts before we go?
I do. As we're sitting here and talking about this, I am happy because I am grateful that at least I have 23 kids, and I'm pretty sure you guys have from 0 to, I don't know, 30 kids.
115.
There you go. I said, we have a bunch of kids between us. All together, we have a bunch of kids, and they get to see, although if for the rest of their life, they never get to see another Black person talk to them about this, or even another Black teacher. They get to see this from us. They get to see, this is a Black teacher I know, and this is how she was with me. And I'm a firm believer that if someone says Black people are this to any of my kids, they will be able to say, well, no, that's not true, because I had a teacher back in 4th grade. She wasn't this. So, yeah.
And that was always my goal, like to make sure they know, even if they are learning the wrong things outside that they see and they learn from me. No, I had this wonderful Black teacher that I know how things should be, and I'm glad for the kids. I feel like some of my kids, they did really get that understanding, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
And just on the other side too, Jose and Shireen, in terms of teaching white kids and having them understand that, I'm not only advocating for my Black kids, but I'm advocating for all kids too. Because, in some situations, students might believe that, okay, because I have a teacher of color, she's going to stick out for the students of color even more. But like, how are we advocating for all our students, and how are we having them speak the same way, despite of their color?
Equity, not equality.
Yeah, I think that was important what Tabby mentioned. We need to remember, and we talk about it all the time at work and in school and with the kids, but a lot of people, like Gladys, you said, it comes from higher up. They're not understanding that it's about equity and not equality.